Imagine this. In the dead of night, under the cover of a moonless sky, American Special Forces helicopters descend like shadows over Caracas, their rotors slicing through the humid air as they extract a sitting president from his fortified compound, handcuffing him and whisking him away to an undisclosed location. But that's not the end. It's the spark that ignites a chain reaction, one that could unravel the threads of the global economy as we know it, forcing nations to scramble for new alliances, currencies to plummet in value, and everyday people like you and me to face skyrocketing prices for everything from gas to groceries. What if this single act, shrouded in claims of justice and security, is actually the desperate gasp of an empire teetering on the brink, grabbing at the world's largest oil reserves to prop up a debt-riddled system on the verge of collapse? By the time you finish watching this, you'll understand why this isn't just another headline. It's the warning sign of a seismic shift that could redefine wealth, power, and survival in our lifetime, and why ignoring it now might cost you everything later. The story does not begin with dramatic speeches or political slogans. Instead, it unfolds in the tense early hours of January 3rd, 2026, around 2:01 a.m. Local time in Venezuela, unusual activity was reported across parts of Caracas. Residents described the sound of aircraft in the night sky and bright lights moving above key areas of the city. According to early international reports, a coordinated operation was carried out by U.S. authorities, later referred to as Operation Absolute Resolve. The mission focused on high-level political structures inside Venezuela. Within a short period, major government figures, including Nicolas Maduro, who had led the country for over a decade, were reported to be under U.S. supervision after the operation. Official statements from Washington framed the move as a response to serious allegations including financial misconduct, cross-border criminal activity, and the mismanagement of vital national resources. U.S. briefings claim that billions in oil-related revenues had been diverted away from lawful channels and from companies operating under U.S. jurisdiction. However, once the situation became public, a different set of questions emerged globally. Was this purely about accountability and law enforcement? Or was it connected to something much larger? Perhaps tied to the delicate foundations of the global financial system and the stability of the American economy itself? To truly understand the situation in Venezuela, we first need to zoom out and look at the country in a broader global context. Venezuela is known for having very large oil resources, and for many years, this natural wealth has played a major role in its economy and international relationships. Over time, the nation's oil sector has experienced significant ups and downs. These changes have been influenced by economic conditions, shifts in leadership, policy decisions, and developments in the global energy market. Different international partners have been involved in cooperation and business agreements connected to these resources, and various factors have affected how much oil has been produced and how infrastructure has been maintained. In recent years, discussions about Venezuela have increasingly included its connection to the world economy. Statements from different leaders and officials have highlighted the possibility of new investments, rebuilding projects, and joint efforts aimed at improving facilities and supporting economic recovery. These ideas are often presented as part of wider conversations about energy, trade, and international cooperation. Some analysts view these events through the lens of global economics, suggesting that developments around Venezuela's energy sector could have broader implications for markets and international partnerships. Others focus on the human side, noting how economic challenges influence everyday life for the people living there. Rather than being a simple story of one event, Venezuela's situation reflects many interconnected themes: natural resources, international relations, economic policy, and the changing dynamics of the global energy landscape. Understanding these elements together helps us see why the country remains an important part of ongoing worldwide discussions about the future of energy and the global economy. As the hours passed, after Maduro's detention by unidentified international operatives, reactions across the world began to intensify. Countries in Latin America, including Brazil and Colombia, expressed concern and emphasized respect for sovereignty, recalling earlier periods of outside involvement in the region. Cuba issued strong diplomatic statements, calling the development a serious moment for international norms. China and Russia, both of which have significant economic partnerships with Venezuela's energy sector, indicated that they would review policy responses and economic steps. Oil markets moved sharply at first, with prices jumping in early Asian trading as observers anticipated short-term uncertainty in supply. Prices later steadied, as announcements suggested that production and management structures could eventually stabilize. Beneath these movements, however, broader questions were forming about alliances, currency systems, and the direction of global economics. For the United States, Venezuela's energy resources are often discussed not only in terms of energy security, but also in relation to the global practice of trading oil in U.S. dollars, a system that plays a role in supporting the dollar's international position. Any change to that structure could influence borrowing costs, inflation trends, and financial stability. These conversations emerged at a time when discussions about national debt and fiscal pressure in the U.S. were already prominent. Looking back at the timeline, The operation appeared not to arise suddenly, but from years of strained relations. Tensions between Washington and Caracas had been shaped by sanctions, economic isolation, and geopolitical alignments. Allegations around illicit activities and security concerns had long been debated in international forums. The reported tipping point was described as intelligence assessments of possible threats, though analysts differ on interpretations, some viewing it as precautionary, others as exaggerated. Eyewitness descriptions from Caracas spoke of uncertainty, movement restrictions, and temporary power disruptions in certain districts, while specialized units reportedly acted with the stated intention of minimizing harm. Maduro was said to have been taken into custody during nighttime hours. By morning, acting leadership figures were making statements, calling the events an external intervention and appealing for diplomatic support globally. Public communication from U.S. political leaders was rapid and direct. Posts on social platforms outlined a proposal in which the United States would assist in administrative stabilization until a safe and proper transition could be achieved. The open-ended wording raised questions worldwide. What would temporary mean? Who would supervise it? And how long might it realistically last? Imagery from that night, satellite captures and aerial footage reported in media, depicted helicopters, coordinated troop movements, and secured perimeters. Beyond the visual elements, analysts focused on the economic context. Venezuela's Orinoco Belt is known for its immense, heavy crude reserves, requiring large investments to revive fully functional production. For the United States, these developments unfolded alongside conversations about national debt levels, interest payments, and fiscal sustainability. Commentators connected the dots: energy flows, inflation pressures, and long-term debt obligations. Some suggested that increased energy supply could help moderate inflation and stabilize markets. Others warned that geopolitical risks could create the opposite effect. The human dimension of Venezuela's story is central. For years, ordinary citizens have endured severe economic challenges, widespread shortages of basic goods, and immense pressures that have driven millions to seek better opportunities in neighboring countries. To some people, the prospect of foreign investment and infrastructure rebuilding offered genuine hope, the possibility of new jobs, improved facilities, and a revival of production that could benefit everyday lives. To others, it sparked serious concerns about national sovereignty, potential dependency on external powers, and the long-term implications for self-determination. Public reactions reflected this deep divide. Demonstrations and gatherings captured a range of emotions. Cautious optimism among those longing for stability and recovery, alongside strong reservations from those worried about losing control over their country's future. Transitions in political leadership always bring uncertainty, and this period was no different, with communities expressing both hope and apprehension in equal measure. Social media played a major role in amplifying these moments. Symbolic images, creative posts, and bold statements spread quickly, sometimes blending serious commentary with lighthearted or dramatic flair. One widely shared edited image, playfully labeled a prominent figure as acting president of Venezuela, generated massive attention. Reactions varied widely, from amusement and support to concern and criticism, illustrating how digital platforms can shape and intensify discussions around major geopolitical developments. This mix of online expression and real-world events prompted broader conversations about how power and influence are communicated in the modern era. Analysts in leading publications and on television examined the potential implications, how revenue from natural resources might be managed, whether new controls on exports represented a step toward recovery or something more contentious, and how such changes fit into the larger picture of global energy dynamics in 2026, including the ongoing shift toward renewables, international climate commitments, and evolving demand patterns. Economists contributed important perspectives, highlighting connections to wider financial challenges. Former central bank officials discussed fiscal dominance, a scenario where high debt levels limit policy options. With elevated debt to GDP ratios and rising interest costs, decision makers confront tough choices: increasing rates to curb inflation, which raises borrowing expenses, or maintaining lower rates, which could weaken currency stability. These insights frame the Venezuela situation as part of a bigger economic narrative, one involving debt management, public confidence, and sustainable growth. Market responses echoed this unease, with bond yields and investor sentiment showing caution. Conversations grew around global trends toward alternative trade currencies, while patterns of capital movement, individuals relocating assets to more stable environments, were seen as indicators of changing trust levels. Proposals from international groups for new financial frameworks added further layers to debates about the future role of major reserve currencies. Maps of Venezuela's basins show immense untapped potential, but experts estimate that revitalizing them could require hundreds of billions of dollars over years. International organizations convened emergency sessions, debating legality, sovereignty, and humanitarian outcomes. Allies of the U.S. reacted carefully, weighing strategic partnerships against principles of non-intervention. Other countries voiced sharper criticism. The ultimate economic effect remained unclear, Expanded production could lower prices globally, while backlash or sanctions could restrict flows and raise volatility. The ongoing debate about reserve diversification, with the share of global reserves held in dollars gradually declining over recent decades, fed into worries about the erosion of the so-called exorbitant privilege. At the narrative's peak, commentators began framing events as part of a potential global economic reset. If fiscal dominance spreads and confidence weakens, consequences might include inflation surges, stricter austerity, or financial restructuring. Venezuela's oil wealth could delay such outcomes, but not fundamentally resolve structural imbalances between spending and productivity. Satirical political posts, declarations of influence, and symbolic gestures all seem to point to a deeper truth. Major powers are navigating vulnerability as much as strength. Naval standoffs, tanker disputes, and sharp diplomatic language raise concerns about escalation, even as most governments publicly emphasize de-escalation and dialogue. Analysts spoke of possible future worlds divided into multiple currency blocks, where trade realigns and influence shifts. Some warned of social unrest, while others saw opportunity for reform and diversification. In this interpretation, Venezuela's resources are not only national assets, but pieces on a global chessboard of energy, finance, and strategy. Ultimately, as the immediate dust in Caracas began to settle and bold online statements echoed across platforms, what remained was reflection on economics, power, and uncertainty. These events, however distant they may seem from daily life, ripple outward into fuel costs, financial markets, migration patterns, and personal expectations about stability. They remind audiences to question narratives, understand complexities, and prepare for change rather than fear it. The world economy may indeed be entering a period of transformation. With awareness and informed thinking, individuals and nations can face it more resiliently, seeking balanced policies and cooperative solutions in an increasingly interconnected yet fragile global system. Thank you for staying with me till the end. Here on The Scope, we dig past the headlines and uncover the hidden layers history tried to bury. If this documentary made you think differently, hit subscribe. Your support tells me to keep creating deeper investigations. Share this video with someone who loves powerful, untold stories, and leave your thoughts in the comments. I read everyone. A new, even stronger documentary is already on the way. So stay curious, and I'll see you again soon, right here on The Scope.